Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to the Curious Realms continuing coverage of the 2024 Texas Bigfoot Conference here in Jefferson, Texas. We have the great pleasure of being joined once again by Mitchel Whitington. Welcome back to the show.
Chris, thank you so much for having me back. I always enjoy it.
You just came out with the book Marion County Monsters. You were just presenting on a recent case that you have been investigating, things like that. Let's get into the case you were investigating a little bit.
Okay, it actually is not a recent one. It actually goes back a few years, but it's probably the most famous one that's ever occurred in Marion County.
Okay.
And it's been talked about a lot, but only the first little part, only the tagline for it. And when you're reading books about Marion County and Bigfoot and things, they'll always say, yes, back in 1965, there was a 13-year-old boy named Johnny Maples that was chased by Bigfoot, and that's where the story ends. Well, I got to do a little bit deeper dive into it, and I found it has a lot of really interesting things. And one thing that just is completely freaky to me, and it doesn't involve Bigfoot at all.
Okay.
So how often have you heard a Bigfoot story and the weirdest thing in the story isn't about Bigfoot, right?
Yeah.
Well, as it turns out, it all started one Friday about 4:30 in the afternoon. A young boy named Johnny Maples was walking down one of our farm-to-market roads.
Okay.
And just north of Jefferson. I mean, literally this took place 3 or 4 miles from where we're sitting right now, which interested me a lot because I can go there. You know,
yeah.
It's get in your car and you can go check it out, which I have done any number of times. And anyway, he's walking down the road, and as he crosses Scotts Creek Bridge over in the underbrush, he sees it shaking and kind of, tells it there's an animal out there, obviously. So he's a 13-year-old boy. What do? You get rocks.
Yeah.
First thing you do. So he picked up a rock and he threw it into the bushes, and it still kept moving like something was still out there. So he picked up another rock, and he didn't know if he was going to see a deer or a turkey or a wild hog or something like that. Out steps what he described as a 7-foot-tall being, monster, whatever you want to call it, covered in black hair. So I've got friends who are investigators, and they would immediately say the first thing you want to do is just remain calm, hold your hands up, show that you're not, holding anything dangerous, try to see if there's any way to establish communication. That's what my friends would do. Yeah. I would run like hell.
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
Which is what young Johnny Maples did. He took off running down the road, and as he was going down, and in fact, I have a quote from him I wanted to read.
Please.
He gave to the local newspaper. He said, quote, "I ran as hard and fast as I could toward Highway 59. But after I'd run a long ways, one of the soles of my shoes came loose, and I had to stop and take them off so I could run faster."
Oh, man.
Yeah, so when he's pulling his shoes off, he glances back, and he doesn't see the creature anymore, but that's not good enough. He's not taking a chance. So he continues running barefoot down the road to his house. And his mother, Miss John Maples, said that when he came bursting through the door, the boy was hysterical.
Wow.
Crying, screaming, yelling, everything. And the other thing was that the soles of his feet were blistered and bleeding, from running on the concrete that hard and that fast, which that's not lost on me. To me, that's kind of an important part. A lot of people looking back on this case have questioned, was he looking for attention? Did he make this up? And as it turns out, I don't think that he would harm himself like that because obviously he's not going to be able to walk for a couple of days.
Well, you grew up in Texas.
Yes.
I grew up in Texas. Are you prone in the middle of summer to taking your shoes off and running down the road?
Only if Bigfoot is chasing me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not even prone to doing it at the swimming pool,
right.
Because you're going to destroy the bottoms of your feet as soon as it hits hot concrete.
Yep.
And
he did. And that's, to me, one of the more important things about this case. But anyway, they called the local sheriff's office, and they sent a deputy out, and they came out rather quickly, and they were very interested in it because it turns out just a few months before they had gotten a similar report. Somebody said that they saw this big black-haired creature out in that same area. So they were now anxious to take a look. So they come out and they start looking around the area where he said he saw it. Don't find anything, and the creek bed most of the time is just a dry creek bed under the road. It's fed by a stream. If we get any rain, it's going to have, but at that time it was dry, like it was when I went out there a few days ago. But they decided that since they couldn't see anything there, they'd look under the bridge. And they went under the bridge, and they actually found a large footprint that they said looked human, but it was way too big. You know, it was certainly wasn't a bear or a coyote or something.
Sure.
No, it was a human footprint. And then, and this is the weird part, and in my presentation I almost hesitated saying this because it is so weird. You have to think, oh, this guy's making this up.
Yeah.
What they found was laundry. They found stacks of blue jeans, a couple of stacks of blue jeans, neatly pressed and folded and stacked under the bridge. Now, to me, that's weirder than the whole Bigfoot thing. People see Bigfoot all the time.
Sure.
But it's like, what is this about? And they even ran it down. I think they said that there were 4 pairs of men's work pants that were well worn but clean, size 32 to 34, and 5 pairs of little boys' jeans, size 5 to 6, and 3 men's hats. And then they just leave that. They just move on. I had to stop and go, wait a minute. Why is that under the bridge? Certainly it has nothing to do with Bigfoot. But if there's a hobo or something living under the bridge, she's not going to keep it,
Well, why the children's clothing, too?
And 2 sizes, Yeah. So to me, that was one of the funniest parts of the story because that makes 0 sense to me. But the sheriff's deputy, and I'll give you another quote, he said to the newspaper, quote, "The clothing looked as though someone had just finished ironing it and neatly stacked them together for storing in a dresser drawer." So,
wow.
That's all there was about the clothing. But to me, that was something I couldn't let go of. I had to keep going.
Well, and even whenever you get into the idea of how the clothes ended up there, because yes, you could say like, sure, perhaps a homeless person, perhaps a vagabond, or something like that. There is a rail line nearby,
right?
So the idea of a hobo or something like that during that point of time, a tramp coming through town. But once again, the freshly pressed, the folded. That's weird.
Yeah, but I was
also a pretty remote area.
Oh yes,
to hop off a line. It's not like it's near a city or something like that. You're way out here in the middle of the country.
Exactly. And the railroads, there is one nearby, but it's not that close. But of course, when I was giving my presentation a while ago, I couldn't help but say, my first thought was that they had secretly discovered the legendary Bigfoot laundry service.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But, that's the end of the laundry part. But to me, that was the most curious thing about it. But to get back to the story,
please.
They didn't find any more tracks, and so the whole thing kind of died down for a week. A week later, the Jefferson Jimplicute, our local newspaper, the 5th oldest one in the state, and fortunately, they're all archived, so you can go back and read the original source material. Wow. But it said that more tracks had been seen. They found them about 150 yards east of the bridge. There was a sandy road that went across the Farm to Market Road, and the track started on the south side. It went to the north side and went further up the road for about 300 feet and then veered off into the woods. So, again, more tracks were seen. Yeah. More people saw it. At that point, a lot of people got interested. There's hunters went out looking for it, got their dogs, got their guns. Yeah. And while they weren't successful, the newspaper reported that another man did see the creature who, he happened to be armed, so he took a couple of shots and didn't hit it, for better or worse. For me, I don't want to see Bigfoot shot, so, but he didn't hit it. But these reports kept coming in, and people who lived in that area said they were hearing howls and growls that weren't consistent with where they lived. And, these people live out in the country. They hear everything. They know exactly what's all around them, but yet these were very foreign to them. So if you fast forward another week or so, a lady from that area had gone to a cemetery called the Old Foundry Cemetery, and she had taken her 14-year-old daughter and a friend of hers, and they went to pay respects to the grave of a family member. And while they were there, out in the woods surrounding the cemetery, they heard a howling. And she said it didn't sound agitated, it sounded surprised. So she, when she got home, she told her husband. Her husband said, "Let's go check it out." Yeah. Again, much braver than me, but he got a sack of pears. And outside the fence, now the cemetery has a fence around it. Nothing has ever happened inside the fence. It's always on the outside perimeter, which is surrounded by woods. And they put right outside the fence a sack of pears. They checked it for a few days, and I think on the second day, the pairs were gone and there were more tracks. So, again, time went by, another week or so, and everybody's talking about it, everybody's looking at it. Well, the Cemetery Association had their annual lunch meeting out there, and they have a big pavilion where, because they have a little chapel where you can hold a funeral, and this is the South, so the first thing you do after the burial is feed the family.
That's right. First thing you do is eat.
Yes, you get the fried chicken and fried okra, and, mashed potatoes. So anyway, they have a pavilion there for that, and they had their dinner in the pavilion, and afterwards they were talking about this, supposed monster around. And they said, well, I'll tell you what, instead of throwing away our leftovers and things, let's put them all together and put them outside the fence and see what happens. And 4 days later, they kept checking, and it was there. And 4 days later, it was gone, and more tracks. So a deputy sheriff came out, and he had been trying to calm everybody down. He was trying to say, look, we have these occasional brushes with, he called them a honey bear, but a small black bear. And he said, that's all this is. Come on. Well, he got assigned to go, check the tracks out. And when he looked at him, he changed his mind immediately. He said, this is not a bear. He said, I don't know what this is. So from that point on, it just kind of died down. But, here in Marion County, every year there's a sighting of Bigfoot somewhere in the area. Now, if you draw a line between the bridge and the cemetery, it's just a little over 4 miles as the crow flies, or as the Bigfoot walks. Yeah. So it's not, unrealistic to think that maybe it could be the same creature, or maybe part of, some people think that they have packs and things like that. But it really put Marion County on a national stage, because so many people saw the tracks. Yeah. So many people heard the howls and the growls and things like that. And I think that kind of cemented Marion County's place in Bigfoot lore.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, and, we are just a few years ago, Jefferson was labeled the Texas Bigfoot capital.
That's right. Bigfoot capital of Texas.
More sightings go on here in the Big Thicket than anywhere else in the state, and it is interesting to see the very long history of those sightings.
It is, and the fact that we continue to have them interests me, and so that's what makes me, if I'm in that area, go, well, I'll just cruise by and take a look.
Well, and to the point that it is now a protected Bigfoot refuge.
Yes, the county commission voted it as such.
Yeah,
but the thing that interests me aren't just the stories that you find, looking back through the history of the area, but it's to people that I talk to who I just run across, and accidentally the subject comes up, and they're not really anxious to tell people about it.
Yeah.
I have a good friend of mine, and she and her husband are probably some of the most respected people in Jefferson. Very, respectable, sober, they're like pillars of the community. And my wife and I were out with them one time, and we were cutting through they have some land, and they were cutting through a pasture and said, man, we're out in the middle of nowhere. We ought to watch for Bigfoot. Silence. And I said, did I say something wrong? I didn't mean to make you guys
Sorry,
mad.
Guys.
And finally she turned around and she said, we saw one. And I said, you're kidding. And she said, no, we were driving across one of our pastures just like this. On the far side, it walked like a man, arms swinging. She said, and we've seen all kind of animals at it. It wasn't like anything we've ever seen. Yeah. And she said, if you ever tell this story, don't use my name with it.
Well, and that is something that we talk about on the show in numerous communities, is that stigma that comes along with an observation.
Yes.
And even the fact of so many scientists that don't want to be involved with the research because of the stigmatization that comes along with it. We have great doctors like Jeffrey Meldrum speaking here today, things like that. Even Haskell Hart getting up and talking about the DNA tracking, things like that. Like there is a wealth of scientific data to be garnered out there. The question is whether or not a scientist is willing to look at it.
Right, and we kind of have the same thing going on with the UFO world. It's been just as stigmatized.
That's right.
If you were an airline pilot and you saw something, you didn't dare report it because it could ruin your career.
Yeah.
Well, now they're coming out and they're letting the fighter pilots talk about it openly, and that stigma's kind of going away. So who knows? Maybe someday it will in the Bigfoot world.
Well, and we literally just met and had on the show after MUFON UAPPD. They're a group of police officers from the Phoenix, Arizona area that are quite literally looking at creating a nationwide aero-type program for first responders where, they go out, they're out near reservations, man. They're like, some of the stories that we respond to on reservation are way different. And we can't come back and say that.
Right.
If we came back, if we reported that, the next thing that would happen when a defense attorney is standing there and you're up on the stand is they're going to be like, a few months ago, you submitted a report for a Sasquatch.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. Pay attention, jury.
Yeah,
Exactly. You're talking about cases going back years that may have to have new evidence looked at, may have to have witness statements looked at because the police officer that took this also took these other statements regarding this. So, the fact that is stigmatized, the fact that their experiences are stigmatized, and to the point that they cannot share that without loss of career, without loss of badge. Even now, I'm sure that there are cases here locally that they respond to that they probably don't really tell a whole lot about because they've asked the police, please don't share this information, outside of the system. There is a large stigma with that, and even within families,
There is. And but I just love those stories where somebody is willing just for a second to come out and say, here's what I saw.
Yeah, and have you been able to track down any of Billy's family or anything like that?
He doesn't talk about it anymore. I have a friend who talked to his wife, and he said, "Could I speak to? Is this the guy who?" So she said, "Yeah, that's my husband." And of course, he's much older now. She said that he does. Yeah. He's put that behind him. He won't talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
So, but Lord only knows how much he'd been ridiculed throughout his life.
Exactly. How many kids made fun of him at school? It gets to the point of jobs, stuff like that.
Yep.
Depending on what you're going for as to where they go in the community for stories about you, things like that. So
imagine being a banker and you have a Bigfoot report and people go, I don't want you handling my money.
Well, and it's one of those, it's something that we talk about regularly whenever we have Lyle Blackburn on, who's right over my shoulder, about the Falcon Monster. You get into a small community. My family's from Mamou, Louisiana. It's one red light, man. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows everybody's business. It can get community thick real quick when you're talking about sharing your story with somebody, because it gets shared at the Piggly Wiggly, and the next thing you know, you're hearing about it at church.
Yep.
And it got back to your story. It happens really, really. It's not like you live in Houston, where if you told somebody, the odds of it making back to you may be pretty slim.
Yeah. In today's world, I think it's different. If he were willing to talk about it, he would probably have been a presenter today.
Absolutely.
But if you look back all through his life, he had to have caught a lot of stuff about that.
Well, and when you start looking at, like, you've been here at Texas UFO Con, whenever our friend has presented on the Pascagoula case, things like that. When you start looking at people like Calvin Parker, who just recently passed, Michael had a great opportunity to chat with him and with other people who were witnesses, and many people did not come forward with that case for many, many years.
Yeah.
Calvin didn't come forward with it for many years because he didn't want that kind of attention in his life. He was a young man. He wanted opportunities in his life, not to be shut down or shot down because of 10 minutes of his life.
Oh, yeah. And, we see the same thing with ghosts and the supernatural. We have a hotel here in Jefferson that has a good bit of supernatural activity that they won't talk about. And I knew the manager of the hotel, and he was such a nice guy, and every time I would ask him, hey, I know this happens. I've had experiences there. What's the real story? Oh, nothing happens here. Nothing happens here. Well, he retired, and on his last day, I went just to shake his hand. He and his wife were moving north. I knew I'd never see him again, so I went just to shake his hand and tell him I really enjoyed knowing him, you know. And when I walked in, he goes, oh, I was hoping you'd come by. Now I can tell you. And he spent the next 30 minutes taking me around the hotel telling me. I said, why aren't you making this better known? And he said, we don't want that reputation. We don't want people to freak out if they stay here.
Well, and that's just it. There's one of two ways that either businesses or homeowners or communities see it. It's either something that they embrace, like Roswell has, you know, well, yes and no, because there's still a good contingent of people in Falk who are like, I wish the looky-loos would go away. You know? Yeah. And that's just it. It's very much a dividing line in communities, these experiences. And even now, are there regular experiences and sightings here in the Jefferson area?
Yes. I mean, from what I understand, statistically, maybe 1 out of every 10 even gets reported. So I think the last one I saw was last year that there was a mention of in a newspaper, which would mean, okay, for that one, there's 10 more that didn't get reported. Yeah. Statistically, you know. Yep. And I think it's gaining a little bit more credibility, if you will. In my book, I wrote a chapter called Embracing Bigfoot, and I talk about how parts of the community are now actually kind of getting on the bandwagon. We have like 3 different restaurants with a Bigfoot burger.
Bigfoot Cigar Company.
Bigfoot Cigar Company. I was there yesterday enjoying a Bigfoot cigar. But there's also the Jefferson Hotel has a Bigfoot room you can stay in. Cool. You know, there's just all these little things that people are starting to kind of say, okay, this is okay. We'll get on board with this. Yeah. And so I think that's a good thing, you know.
I think so as well, especially things like the protective order, you know, because if we don't start, this is something that I have hopped on the bandwagon of many years ago. You know, I think many more events such as this probably need to team up with Texas Parks and Wildlife. Yep. Give Texas Parks and Wildlife a booth, because if we don't protect those natural areas, if we don't protect these habitats, the next apartment complex that goes up over here, you're going to have Bigfoot rooting through the trash. You have now encroached on his area, you know, so we need to start these conservancy efforts before we find Bigfoot. Once you find the panda, it's almost too late to start protecting its habitat.
Right. I saw a T-shirt on somebody here just a while ago, and it was a Texas Parks and Wildlife T-shirt. That's right. With Bigfoot on front. I thought, well, okay, maybe they're coming around now.
Well, and it's the thing, you know, I say it regularly whenever I speak on shows, stuff like that. If you are a researcher, I will look at the camera. If you're a researcher, if you're out there squatching, if you have trail cams, if you have microphones set up, things like that, contact your local wildlife department, give them those pictures, give them that footage, just give it to them. Let them know, I have 8 acres of property that I have cameras out on. I would like to give you this data. They cannot afford to put trail cameras out for black bear counting. They cannot afford to put cameras out in that area for deer counting. You're right. Absolutely. Things like that. So if you can begin that handshake and say, I'm here as a citizen scientist to help you in what you're doing, you'd be surprised where you get when you come to them and say, hey, remember those trail cams? I got something really weird here.
What's this?
You know, because now you've been handing them data. Right. You've been contributing to that data pool for them. So now you're a research partner. Yeah, you're not somebody who's competing with them. You are helping them.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing idea, and I would encourage people to do that.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, we need to be ready to, as a community, reach out to science. We need to start getting that ready, and even in the paranormal world, you know, the idea that we should. Science is rapidly catching up, and it's really interesting to see that.
And once something gains momentum, it's hard to stop.
That's right. That's right. So, and you know, it's been really interesting just over the last 5-6 years to see nationally the number of shows like this that pop up. Right. The number of events, the number of podcasts, things like that. It is obviously a very community-driven thing, whether it's paranormal, Bigfoot, UFOs, UAPs. These are all community-driven things. They're all things that come experientially, and we're all looking for that tie together of experience. It's why we go to church together.
Yep.
You know, it's being in a room of people with common belief and common mindset. So, yeah, finding those things, and when you find them in your community, encourage them. You know, because it's a rare and beautiful thing. Even the paranormal events that happen here in Jefferson. It's great to see the one just coming up in November.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's going to be a really good one. I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, you are absolutely right, and it's not just restricted to paranormal things. If you're a duck hunter, you join Ducks Unlimited.
That's right. So yeah, you join the Coastal Conservation Association if you're a fisherman.
Your people. You know?
That's right. That's right.
I think these conferences are really good things.
Well, and it's one of those, like I normally tell people, I could probably put my money behind a political candidate if I believed in that as much as I do this community. You know,
right,
like I'm
exactly.
a monetary sponsor at events like this because I believe in this.
Yeah.
This exchange of ideas, this exchange of experiences, that's what brings us to the next level.
That's true.
You know, and we as communities need to support that. We as individuals who look to these communities need to support those events.
Oh, I completely agree.
So, Mitch, thank you so much for taking the time. It's always
Chris,
great chatting with you.
I enjoy it every time I'm on, and I thank you so much.
Absolutely. Let everybody know where they can go to get not only their copy of Marion County Monsters, but, man, you got like a table full of books over there. Every time I see you, you've got a new publication about Texas tombstones, about, you know, hauntings, things like that.
I'm really blessed in that I have a job that I really love. You know,
yeah.
I get to investigate things that catch my fancy.
Yeah.
And Marion County Monsters, that is hot off the press. I'm surprised it didn't burn your fingers.
I know.
It's not even on Amazon yet, but it will be.
I love it.
Soon.
I love it. So
you got
awesome.
one of the first copies.
I can't wait to dig into it on the way home, man. While you are online on Amazon, checking out all of the great work from Mitchel Whitington, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is where you can like, follow, subscribe. CuriousRealm.com/store is where you can find all of the books, movies, classes from our guests, as well as your copy of the Field Observation and Encounter Guide. If you are a paranormal researcher, if you're a Bigfoot researcher, UFO researcher, this is an easy way to gather your data in the field and get it ready to shake the hands of science. When we come back from this quick break, we will get into our waning coverage of the 2024 Texas Bigfoot Conference right here in Jefferson, Texas.
By the way, I have one.
Oh.
So good job, man.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll be back right after this.
Thanks.
The key to good science is good research. At the heart of good research is a good data set. With the Field Observation and Encounter Log from Curious Research, you can easily keep track of your investigative information all in one place, making it easier to review cases and readily see comparisons and contrasts between them. Whether out in the woods squatching, in a back room gathering EVPs, or using high-tech gear to track UFO, UAP activity, this easy-to-carry, pocket-sized scientific data log is the perfect companion for any field researcher. You can find your copy of the Curious Research Field Observation and Encounter Log at Amazon.com or visit the official Curious Realm store at CuriousRealm.com/store to reserve your copy for yourself, your family, or a mind that you want to open. That website again is CuriousRealm.com/store.